Since the September 2001 attacks in which airlines were used as missiles to target buildings, the modern-day security implications for the aviation sector has grown immense. Any disruption to the aviation industry has not only local but also global implications, which impacts not only airlines, its passengers, and also the global shipment of cargo. Terrorist groups know the attractive value of airports and airlines as they provide high-impact and multinational targets enclosed within one space. Security concerns to airports can be varied and need multi-layered response capacities.
See, airports have become a prime target. It's critical infrastructure. They by default become a prime target. Many a times our approach to secure airports is more focused on the land side, but we need to focus on the air side of things as well as other critical sides of the airport like logistics, as well as cargo handling, as well as airport maintenance or aircraft maintenance. New age technologies like deep learning, machine learning and artificial intelligence will provide airport operators enough knowledge to predict any kind of anomalies and to predict any danger which is imminent, and probably will help them prepare themselves better to combat those.
In India, the airport security is largely entrusted to the Central Industrial Security Force, a paramilitary police body which is likely to encounter further millennial challenges in addressing the safety and security of aviation facilities. IIRIS report in this week's episode looks at the challenges and opportunities for security operators in the aviation field and will elucidate on these concerns as they form a critical part of the national infrastructure.
Hello and welcome to another episode of IIRIS Report, and in this particular episode we are looking at aviation security and its importance to the Indian economy and to the various risks that aviation security does pose both to the industry and to the individual passengers, may they be very, very senior members of the industrial fraternity or they could be just ordinary citizens. But aviation security impacts on all. Most importantly, it is a reflection of the growth area of the Indian economy, slated as Indian aviation industry is to become possibly the biggest aviation industry sector in the world very soon, and the government of India has therefore decided in its wisdom to pour in something close to $10 billion to enhance aviation security. But how soon that can be done and how much is technology both a force multiplier and a challenge to the aviation security sector, we will have experts answer that. We have with us Captain KPS Nair, who is an aircraft and an aviation expert, having been a pilot, having served at various levels in the aviation sector, as well as has been an advisor earlier to Indigo Airlines and also to the civil aviation sector in the Government of India. Welcome onto the show, sir. And we have Mr. M.S. Bali, a former police officer, and also the former Special DG of Police, who was at some stage also an Assistant DG CRPF on the airport security related issues. So I'll start with you, Mr. Bali, sir. It is said that security is a multi-edged weapon. And in terms of security, while we are constantly expecting the security forces to provide us a security cover, and airport security, as we understand, is the gold standard of security. But to what extent are you constantly evolving your techniques and your capabilities in keeping with the international trends? Because let's face it, as a senior IPS officer, you are completely plugged in with events in the world. But the Jawan on the ground, who has to check people, who has to follow procedures, how quickly are his skills updated and how much is he made to be passenger friendly?
As far as the security standards are concerned, ICAO, that is the International Civil Aviation Organization based in Montreal, they set the standards for civil aviation almost all over the world. And the basic scheme of aviation security prescribed by ICAO is followed all over the world and also by India. So the basic procedures have been set by them. Now, there is a fine tuning of those procedures, keeping in view the country specific conditions and requirements and the intelligence inputs. So, this is the broad philosophy under which
I normally don't interrupt, but here is a fact that comes out that ICAO has placed India on its list of 13 worst performing nations on airport security. Now, if ICAO standards are the ones that are to be followed, and if you look at a country like Israel and their obsession with security and El Al in particular, I think they go well beyond what ICAO prescribes, because if you were to go through that, I think even in India, bulk of the flights will never take off on time. So how do you do the balancing acts?
No, that's what I told you, that we fine tune our procedures and our training and everything, keeping in view our own conditions and our own inputs, which we receive from the intelligence organizations.
Captain Nair, sir, I want to ask you that Indian airports also lack adequate material resources for airport security. Generally, with the scale of activity that is happening now, the random screening equipment, door frame metal detectors, handheld metal detectors, explosive trace detectors, bomb disposal equipment, some of these are in short supply. So, how do you make up for that in terms of you have to get the passengers through? And what is the advice that you would have given to the civil aviation authorities? That do you just say no further passengers can go because we don't have equipment, or we just make do and we take a chance?
It's not like that. What happens is that in India for the last few years, as you have been saying, the traffic growth has been tremendous. Air traffic, passenger, as well as induction of aircraft. What actually the airports does is, based on the requirements put up by the Security Handling Agency, CISF, the equipments are procured. And certain times the growth is so much that the induction of the material may be lagging, and also the servicing of those equipments which are already lying also lags sometimes, and this causes. But what they do is they put more of manpower to take care of such situations and let the flow of traffic go uninterrupted.
So I want to come to you, the manpower, because manpower was an area, I'm sure, which have been much under your umbrella. Now the thing is that as an ordinary citizen, I have respect for the efficiency of the CISF. I have seen that they find out something in your baggage which even sometimes I have unintentionally carried in my baggage, and I have just tapped my head and said, oh my God, how did this come in here? So they are extremely alert, they're extremely capable, but there is a problem. I think there is a manpower overstretch, because everywhere they have so much of pressure on them to be everywhere, because everyone's saying, give me CISF and nothing else will matter. Now, can they be substituted with manpower from other organizations, or is it only going to be, for example, opening and closing of a gate before you get into the bus to go to the airline? A CISF guy is a highly trained guy. You don't need him there to open and close the gate. You would rather need him at the baggage checkpoint, physical checkpoint. At that time at the gate, he's just looking at your baggage tag and your boarding card, which so many others can do. So how do you do the balancing act? Has it ever been considered?
Yes, it is always under consideration, because the airports, the airport authorities or the airport operators, let us say, they are always under pressure for paying the CSF dues. So there is always a demand from the airport operators that the CSF strength should be kept to the minimum. So this factor that you are talking of is constantly kept in view, and over a period, some duties have been handed over to the private operators. For example, the cargo operation is entirely in the hands of private operators, private security.
Yeah, I know for a fact like Delhi airport itself owes the CISF several hundred crores for providing the security and the services. So the CISF, though it's a governmental body, it doesn't come cheap.
Well, we have to follow the pay standards of the Government of India, of other similar organizations.
So you're saying the CISF people deployed at airports are paid by their salaries are provided by the airport?
Their salaries are reimbursed by the airport.
Okay.
They don't wait for the money to come from the airports before the salaries are disbursed.
Okay,
Salaries are disbursed.
Okay.
But they have to be, then the airport operators have to, or any other place where CSF is deployed, the agency has to compensate the cost.
Okay, so some very important points have been brought out, and we are right now quite clear in our mind that the CISF is part of the gold standard that airport security provides, but there are other innovative measures that can still be considered to enhance their capability through the use of technology. But we'll look at that after a break, when we will examine how much of the technology part you need to take as against how much you have to rely on manpower and human skills. But that after a break. Welcome back. We continue to have our two experts with us, and we're looking at aviation security, airport security, and how safe is air travel. Captain Nair, sir, you've been a pilot. You've worked even at the ATC. You've been involved with advising Government of India and other airlines, private airlines, on airport and aviation safety and security. A question that is now doing the rounds following the crash in Kathmandu is that how much of it is pilot error? How much is it because of the degree of difficulty of landing at tricky airports like Kathmandu, which I believe is not the easiest of airports to land in? And equally important is, how do you balance the dependence on technology vis-a-vis the dependence on the human factor? Because one of the things that's also emerged is that, you know, communication skills of a pilot vis-a-vis communication skills of the ATC can also cause confusion and error. Because if they all don't speak English language in any similar manner, then what the pilot is trying to say and what the ATC is trying to say, there could be a miscommunication and it could cause confusion. Which is one of the factors that is being attributed to the Kathmandu crash. Now, your views on that?
The final investigation report in any case of the accident which took place at Kathmandu last week will reveal or let the public know what actually was the cause. The cause is not to find fault with anybody, but to make a way for getting the system better. As regards to what you correctly stated, communication gap is something which has been a predominant factor in a number of accidents across the globe. You can remember, if you remember, I was the investigator to the mid-air collision accident of 1996 at Charki Dadri, where the cause of the accident ultimately was revealed through the investigation as communication, total communication, because the pilot of the Kazakhstan Airways was not knowledgeable in English language. And as later, under the recommendation of the investigation which India conducted, the ICAO decided to make it mandatory for all pilots and ATCOs to have minimum knowledge in English and air traffic control phraseology, which is specific to that particular area of activity.
So this is obviously a very scary prospect, because the number of airlines that are multiplying and a number of countries in the world where English is not spoken. So to what extent they would be able to acquire English language skills to be able to respond to ATC's instructions is anybody's guess. I mean, that's a very important point that
all member countries across the globe in India has accepted that recommendation as, and the process is under implementation, and it is advanced stages. It is not, I don't think that it is not taking place. But here the problem is Nepal. ATC speaks English very well, and the Bangladeshi pilots also, if they are Bangladeshis, they are aware, to my knowledge, their English basic knowledge is not bad. I also worked with them.
No, I know, but it's not the question of we're being generous or kind to them. It's the question of lives, and so therefore I personally would say that there has to be very rigid requirement of ensuring that they have good functional English skills, failing which I don't know what is the way out, but you can't expect our ATC to start conversing with them in Bengali and trying to guide them along because they're not stumbling there. I've been to Bangladesh a number of times, I've been to Nepal a number of times, and let me tell you, the comfort level we have with English in India, they don't have it, because their basic education in those countries is not done in English. You go to Central Asia, it's probably much worse.
Yes, that's right.
So Sri Lanka is a different case in point, where they are comfortable with English. But back to you, sir. Here is another big question, and that is the scramble for new airports leading us to compromise on airport security? Because, you know, you have only finite number of CISF personnel or trained personnel in the government and the police services who can actually provide us airport security. But on one side, there is a political announcement that X number of more airports will be created across India. And there again, you need minimum quality of security. Sometimes I find the security is obsessively annoying, because you don't need to go through all those motions. But the bottom line is that we could do with good security, but how do you, supposing you have 1,25,000 CISF personnel, which is I think roughly the number of CISF personnel involved in airport security, and you soon have the airport numbers going up by 50% over the next 5 years or 10 years, because more and more cities in India are clamoring for airports. So how do you provide? Where do you do the balancing act? Where do you get the people in from outside who stand in and help the security, CISF security people out?
No, first of all, I like to correct your impression about the numbers involved, CSF numbers involved in aviation security. For quite some time, CSF has been manning only about 49 major airports out of about 80 odd operational airports in the country. For the last, I think, maybe now 10 years, the number is with the CSF is only 49. So the CSF strength is not being dispersed as quickly as you are imagining.
No, I'm not saying now, but I'm saying that if we go in for expansion further, it will be dispersed.
I'll come to
and that. The other than the 49 airports, you're trying to say that the other 40% of our airports have no CISF presence?
At the moment, you know, even before CSF was inducted onto the airports, that was after the Kandahar hijack, this decision was taken. Before that, the local police forces, the state police forces, wherever the airport was situated, used to look after the aviation security. So perhaps I am now out of touch, but that may be the scenario even now. So CSF is deployed only even now, I think, on about 49 or 50 airports, and something like 20 to 30,000 people, not more than that in any case, of the CSF are only deployed in aviation security. The rest are deployed in other sectors.
Industrial sectors.
Yeah, industrial sectors. So we are not overstretched, but yes, I can assure you that the training of men is a continuous process, and the CSF has set up specialized training institutions for training screeners and all that, and for getting them passed by the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security. You see, the biggest training issue is of the screeners who man the X-ray machines, and they have to pass, after training, they have to pass this test of conducted by the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, who are the aviation regulators, aviation security regulators.
Obviously, this, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I have highest respect for the CISF's capabilities, but I was under the impression that they are overstretched, but you are giving a more optimistic picture that they aren't overstretched. So we're not in for very difficult times. But let me ask the last question to Captain Nair. We're short of time, sir. Very quickly, sir, are we short of aviation security experts in general who can advise private airlines, who can advise the government? I mean, generally people who understand the business of aviation security, which goes a lot beyond baggage screening and screening of individuals.
Why aviation security alone? In every area of activity in aviation, as I said earlier, because the growth has been tremendous in the past few years, and the training has not met that challenge equally well by the government or by, I won't say airlines themselves or airport authority and maybe even CISF. The security as well as all other areas, there is a lack of skilled personnel. This includes pilots, engineers. There are you will see engineers at the same time not without job in aviation because they are not skilled enough. They need to be experienced. Likewise, it goes to the security personnel as well. People acquire experience and then only they can be deployed on the duties.
Okay, so while there is a certain degree of optimism in terms of the CISF and the Government of India police services providing security at the airports, and we have more and more airports which are likely to come up, we are not stretched for that, but where we are certainly stretched is that other people in the business of aviation, whether engineers, whether people looking after aircraft security or various other areas where passengers' lives could be at stake, things are not that romantic, and we need to be alert to this whole challenge of security. And I think there is room here for more debate on the subject and for the private sector chipping in and coming in to support the government's efforts in every which way they can. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us on this show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.